Hello, everybody. I'm Stephanie.
And I'm Georgianna.
And this is Wholehearted Loving, where we teach you simple tools to grow the muscles you need to be with big feelings and overwhelming sensations in your body.
Whether you have active challenges in your life or relationships, or whether you're just here to learn to be kinder to yourself, we pull out all the little things that make life feel better, the things that give you a sense of hope and direction.
So if you're too hard on yourself or on others,
if you want to feel real, deep connection in your life and relationships,
even if you want to reprogram your inner critic while you're sleeping,
this is a great place to be.
So welcome, and we hope this episode brings you just the tidbit you needed today.
Enjoy the show.
Hello, everybody. Welcome. Today, we're going to be talking about trigger awareness and real embodied ownership of those triggers and what that can look like in your life and relationships. You can find self-reflection prompts for this episode and every episode on our Instagram at Wholehearted Loving. And you can learn more about us and how to practice with us live at wholeheartedloving.com. And before we get started, we'll do a body-based self-connection practice to connect with ourselves before we connect with each other and this podcast.
All right. So this practice is great on its own without any context. And as you hear us chatting about, what we're going to talk about in this episode, I think it's going to feel fitting. So we're going to practice a hold, which maybe you've done with us before. And let's take a moment just to find a sense of sturdiness from something right now. So mine's coming from what I'm sitting on, and let's go with this hold. It's a double hold. It's taking both of your hands, making an L, I guess. You know when we're trying to figure out which hand is left and right? Did you ever learn that?
Yes.
Hold up the hands, which one has the L. So you're holding up your hands like that, and then you're taking your right hand and tucking it just under your arm and doing the same with your left. And so, Steph, I saw you have originally put the hand on the outside of the arm. That's totally fine if you want one hand under and one hand on the outside, or you can tuck both underneath, whichever feels better. And just notice what it's like to offer yourself a gentle hold. I think I want to untuck one hand, place it on my outer arm. That feels better for me. And with this one, there's always the option to gently lower the head and neck if that feels good. And as a metaphor, this is like learning to hold everything that's within us with some gentleness, learning to allow whatever stirs within us some space to be here. Because as we bring a holding to it, a space for it, we can also become a little bit more curious about what's here with me today in this moment. Or you might not want to play with analogy at all and just enjoy how it feels.
I'm getting so many different feelings from this. And it's interesting in the context of triggers. Like my dad always says this, what do you mean trigger? Everything is a trigger. Anything that causes anything is a trigger. And that's exactly right? We're talking about the interior content that we have that's sparked off by something, words, a smell, a touch, whatever it is. There's always a lot of content in there. And what I'm discovering doing this is that I have totally different associations with all of the different types of holding I just tried. The two hands under the armpit does not feel like a soothing hold to me in any way. It feels like I'm hiding, I'm cold, I'm hunched, maybe I'm a robber or something like that. And then, but the primary feeling is that person, I think it was Mad TV, sort of a dorky character who smells her fingers after putting them in her armpits. Like that's what's coming up for me. So none of the relaxing, soothing, feeling held stuff really. So then when I go to the one hand in the armpit and one hand to the outside of the arm, the sensation is like a present and waiting kind of a feeling, which is different than a soothing hold, right? When I move that outer arm hand up onto my shoulder, it becomes like a cozy nestling in for bed kind of a feeling, which is soothing, but not energizing, right? It makes me want to kind of curl up and go to sleep. And like, that's just two of them. So anyway, the one that I settled on that I discovered feels the most supportive, and which I don't think I've actually done before, is to take the armpit hand. The armpit hands just don't feel good to me. They feel associated with coldness. Okay. So I put that armpit hand, my right hand, up onto my shoulder. And then I put my left hand on my lower arm, hanging onto it, almost like I'm a bag, like a laptop bag crossing my body. So I've got my shoulder, I've got a bit of my back, and I've got my front. And this feels held and supportive and like energized at the same time.
I love this. And this is sort of the spirit of these body connection practices, not necessarily to feel better, but as an opportunity to be curious about what feels good and supportive for me in this moment. right? And am I willing to bring a little tweak and then pause and notice and tweak again and pause and notice until I find something that sort of feels either like, ooh, this is just right, or this feels the most right or most supportive for the moment or for the amount of time I have or I'm willing to make to assess this right now. And you ended up on a hold that I sort of discovered by accident some time ago that I enjoy, but it didn't occur to me to go there today. So I suggested the two hands under the armpits because I'm like, I haven't done that hold for a while. And I know that there's been a time in my life where that one felt good. And I noticed pretty quickly, this one actually doesn't feel good right now. And I actually was surprised. I was like, huh, interesting. I've never had it not feel good. I've had it not be the thing that feels the best, but I've never had it not feel good. Oh, and this is really interesting too. When I had two hands under my armpits earlier, I was sitting cross-legged on the bed, and that didn't feel good. But I just adjusted so that my feet, one foot touches the ground, one leg is sitting, like resting across that bottom leg. And now when I have my hands under the armpits, it feels sort of okay because this upper body sensation is an accessory. What I'm noticing more is the rootedness and the sturdiness of my hips and my feet and my legs. And it makes this sort of be a gentle hold that feels more pleasant. Isn't that neat?
Yeah.
I wouldn't have known that. If I didn't shift my legs and if I wasn't practiced at paying attention to subtleties, I might not have noticed that.
Yeah. I love that. And part of why this stuff is so neat, it's microscopic and it's so impactful. So if this part of you that was feeling just sort of decent, the hold that you had up top, let's swap that hold out for like a difficult conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So now you've got a difficult conversation and the sturdiness of your legs below you. And
Yeah.
suddenly you're bringing a slightly better feeling to that difficult conversation.
Exactly. Right. And it's a tiny tweak, but it makes such a big, big difference. And if I were to ask myself right now, like, okay, just assume I'm about to have a hard conversation and I give myself these two options. Do I want to sit? And I'm not going to change. I'm just for the sake of this experiment, I'm not changing anything about the top half of my body. Do I want to sit like this? Or, which is right now, my legs are crossed on the bed. Or do I want to lower my legs down, plant one foot firmly into the ground, cross my left foot over my right knee? I would be like, I want to sit this way to have the conversation. I even notice my gaze, my spine wants to straighten. My gaze wants to look up. It's almost like I could be more present here with the person across from me if I sat like this, and more breath is able to move up and down. And because I can feel my hips and the sturdiness in my feet and my legs more, I feel like, even if the other person said something that wasn't great to hear, I can lean on some of the sturdiness. Or even if I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I should say that thing because it might really bother them or hurt their feelings, or they might get really upset with me and that terrifies me. I can feel whatever yucky feelings and sensations come into my body, which will probably be, for me, knowing me, it'll be like stomach, gut, chest, throat kind of area. I can allow that to be there while also feeling the sturdiness of my lower half.
And this is an interesting inversion of the topic. It's like a co-supporting topic about what we're doing today, because there are a couple conversations I'm about to have that I'm not looking forward to. Well, in some ways I am, but they're going to be challenging sensorially for me. It's going to bring up a lot of stuff. And I know, like, I've got tools from all of this good work we do. I know a touchstone I'm going to be bringing with me. I know what parts of my body I'll be able to focus on to support me in this conversation. And there are also things that I don't want to bring with me into this conversation, right? And so the reason this topic came up is because we just had a live call, and one of the practices we were going through was about feeling a difficult feeling and then titrating between things in your environment, things that feel more decent. One of the things I focused on was this corner of this shed that I'm in, where work has been done in a way that I take exception to. And it brings up all this old stuff. And so I did a nice deep breath. I was sat with that feeling. And then I realized, oh, I want to scream. Like there's a whole lot in this crack for me. And I want to scream and rail against, the past. And then when I went back to the initial prompt, which was about, what's the thing you're feeling uncomfortable about, I realized I wasn't actually uncomfortable about the conversations themselves. It was all this loaded stuff that I was bringing with me, that scream I wanted to bring, everything in that scream I would be bringing to this conversation if I hadn't taken the time to notice that it existed and go, oh, geez, my assumptions and my presuppositions about this conversation also contain a huge amount of historical information that is unrelated to the topic at hand and will be unhelpful for me to carry with me. And it takes a lot of the potency away, just being aware of it. Like now that I see it, I can name it, I can do something about it.
Right. So to help me get this clear, are you saying that you have some upcoming conversations that aren't going to be the easiest ones to have? And was that the difficult thing that you brought into our body practice? Okay. Yeah. So as you were thinking about having these uncomfortable or potentially uncomfortable conversations, you noticed some body sensation come up, right? And part of our practice was to notice what's uncomfortable in the body or the mind, and then practicing looking for, like, going on a little scavenger hunt of, like, what else is here? What else am I present to in my body, in my thoughts, in the energy, in any images that pop up? And I guess one of the places you went to with that was, hey, visually, I see a crack in the wall, right? Is that sort of what happened?
Yeah.
Yeah. And you saw a crack in the wall and you felt a whole lot of charge come up in your body, right? And is it seeing that and then feeling the impulse to want to scream? Did that make you realize there's more to what's feeling often uncomfortable for me than these conversations that are coming? I'm actually holding a charge in my body about something that happened in the past that I'm not fully complete with, or at least the charge is present in my body again right now. And I think I hear you saying, good thing I noticed that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because now I can support myself with whatever needs to happen with that charge and that impulse to scream that's there, so that I either give it some space, some love, some room to move that energy before I go and have these conversations, right? I can also go into these conversations knowing, hey, there's something I feel charged up about that's not really related to this conversation. And sometimes it is sort of related to the conversation, but not fully.
Yeah.
But now I have that awareness that, hey, I might actually be more on edge than I would be, and a little bit more activated than I would be if this charge didn't exist in my body right now.
Yeah.
And so I want to bring a little bit more awareness to that, of how do I support myself before and during the conversation so that I can be more intentional about how I want to show up.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I would even add, depending on your comfort level with these people you're about to talk to, right? To be able to be honest and transparent. Like, oh, I noticed that I'm also carrying a bit of a charge today from something unrelated. So if you find that I'm a little bit short or whatever, like, let's, know that it's not personal or not to do with this. And I'll try to remember to take a pause when that happens. And hey, if you notice I seem a little, snippy, I'm okay if you just, call a little pause, wave your hand or something, let me know, hey, like, can we just take a moment?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Imagine if we could let people know that, like, I'm carrying a bit of a charge today and it has nothing to do with you. And we're having a conversation that's a little bit challenging for me. And I've been in positions where I'm aware of that. And what I do is I add an extra layer of, would it be okay if we take this conversation a bit slowly, a bit slower today? Right? Would it be okay if I take moments here to pause here and there? Because I don't want to let that charge be the one taking over in this conversation.
Yeah, totally. So what you're describing is the real embodied ownership that we're talking about here, right? You had a great analogy when we were talking about what to talk about today. You likened this to something Gabor Mate had talked about, Dr. Gabor Mate, about us all being loaded weapons, and we can be either loaded with blanks or with live rounds, right? And so what I've just described, having this scream and frustration inside that's unrelated, I could be going into this conversation full of live rounds, or I can go in being like, I'm loaded, help. This is not, I don't want to injure anyone. And, here's what's present right now. And it is so often unrelated. And we do carry so much stuff I remember once this just a beautiful, lovely, simple day, not feeling anything other than delight, riding my bike on the seawall. And I went through somebody's perfume smell that immediately transported me to a time that I felt very nostalgic about from my teenage years that had all this emotional content. And like, I embodied that for, if anybody had talked to me, I would have like burst into tears or, whatever. And that's just from a nanosecond of a passing smell. Like we are loaded quite often. And if we're not paying attention or taking the time to slow down and notice how we're feeling and the thoughts that are associated, we're missing out on a huge aspect of self-discovery and connection that could be better feeling, more decent feeling.
Yeah. And like when you talk about riding through that perfume that lingered, it sounds like it connected you to nostalgia, and like the nostalgia was sort of sweet and warm. And is that what you're saying? Okay.
Yeah.
So right now we're talking about something that's sweet and pleasant that all of a sudden hits you in your system. And I'm saying hit you in your system, where often we'll talk about, if this was a negative experience, we would have said, oh, that was a trigger. Right. And we could have said that lady or that dude wearing all that whatever, and like they're the problem. And we're not often thinking, oh, perhaps could it be what feels challenging is there's something that feels incomplete for me around that issue that happened. Could it be that I still feel a lot of big feelings around that thing that happened? Could it be that I'm still holding on to some survival energy, some incomplete survival processes that haven't had the chance to like finish in my system and feel resolved? Could it be that it's not about the person who was biking in front of me who had put on 2 puffs of cologne or perfume? Could it be that this resides in me and it got woken up a little bit as I biked through that scent? But often when something happens and we feel yucky inside, and sometimes it causes us to behave in ways that we don't love, it's easy to want to blame it on a trigger. Oh, you triggered me. You did that. You triggered me. You're the problem. And connecting back to this analogy, I was in a workshop with Dr. Gabor Mate, and he spoke about how much time and energy we as a collective are placing focus on triggers and naming, oh, that's a trigger and that's a trigger and you shouldn't trigger me and I don't want, and you're becoming a trigger of mine. And I don't know if he said this, but this is what I took away from it. Like, what if instead of putting all that focus outwardly on external triggers, we became curious about like what is living within me, right? That's getting stirred up right now. And like what he talked about was, if you have a weapon and there's no ammunition inside, no matter how hard you pull the trigger or how many times you pull the trigger, nothing happens. No injury happens, right? And he said, it's really important for us to take a look at ourselves and our human body and see that as the loaded weapon or as the weapon, and bring awareness to, am I loaded? And what am I loaded with? And is it possible that what I'm holding within me that's unresolved or too overwhelming for the capacity that I currently have could potentially harm someone or harm a relationship if I don't tend to that in the way it needs to be tended to?
So then I want to draw attention here to our beautiful minds. I've got a mind like a steel trap, and it's not natural for me to go to body and feelings. So I need these practices to slow down and experience those sensations. If you had asked me, so I'm aware I'm carrying a charge about this old situation, but if you asked me if I was carrying a charge, it's not that I would say no exactly. It would be like, well, here's a big long explanation about why I understand the situation and it all intellectually makes sense and blah, blah, blah. Doesn't matter. My body is having a reaction, right? And so most of us, I'd say, are going to be intellectualizing past and current situations. We're going to be making them make sense in our mind. We're going to be diminishing our feelings about things. And we're just going to go right into the land of understanding, even if it's not great. And you might be able to say like, oh, I don't really like that thing, but it's fine. We're talking about the charge in the body. And that doesn't go away by thinking it away. Right.
And so you're talking about like the importance of like having an intellectual awareness of what can be different types of ammunition and are they present in your body. Also the sensation experience of things, and also like the feeling element, the emotional element of things. And I think all of those are important to see more clearly, feel more clearly. And I would say go with whichever one you have easiest access to. And then from there, try to branch out and bring an awareness to the other ones that are maybe not as natural for you so far, not as practiced for you to bring an awareness to. I've worked with people who feel that's very obvious to them that on a sensation and an emotion feeling level, they are bringing a lot. They're bringing a fully loaded weapon. Right? They might be able to say that. But what I notice happening is they think they only have one type of ammunition in their weapon, and they think it's my partner and I have all this conflict, and that is the ammunition, that is the problem. Or there's been trust that's been broken between us, and that is the problem, that is the ammunition that lives within, the charge that lives within. And that can totally be true. But what they haven't been ready or willing or able yet to look at or acknowledge is, could there be some ammunition within you that could be related to the fact that your father was never present for you as a child? In what way could that potentially have loaded your weapon up with some ammunition that you're not fully aware of? So that when you end up saying your partner's triggering you and you lose it on them, you think it's because they cooked the dinner wrong, or they didn't do this thing, or that they spoke to you a certain way. When in reality, it could be some of those things. And it could also be some hurt and pain that you're carrying from another place, another time, in your dynamic with somebody totally different, that we haven't named as that's one source of ammunition for me that sits within me and my body as the weapon. And how can I'm going back to how we started this episode, how can I hold those parts of me with some gentleness and care and curiosity to know that that's not wrong or bad about me, right? It's not helpful or pleasant if I take it out on a person, but it probably helps me more in the long run to bring some curiosity and some kindness to, like, what am I holding in here that I'm aware of and that I'm totally not aware of? Right. And I'd say another type of ammunition for me that I can find in my body. So here I named past conflict and difficulty with someone. That can be a type of ammunition. And I named, more historical childhood family of origin hurts and pain. That can be another sort of type of ammunition. But for me, I also know, and this ties to one of our previous episodes, if I've stretched myself thin, I've said too many yeses. That's now a type of ammunition. That's a charge that I hold. If I now also know that in 2 days I have to do a presentation and I feel a bit nervous about that, that could be another type of ammunition. If I know that tonight I need to have a difficult conversation with someone I'm not looking forward to, that could be a thing. If I'm now worried because my child's not doing well at school, that's another thing that's within my body that I'm holding. So when that person cuts in front of me while we're driving, that could be the person who's all messed up, who's screwing me over in life, and I want to lose it on them, right? Or my partner didn't say this thing the right way, or didn't greet me the right way, or, I feel let down by them again because I've told them so many times to do this thing and they didn't do it, right? And then I lose it on them when, rightly so, maybe you're disappointed, right? That you had an agreement and they didn't live up to their end of the bargain. And also, what else are you bringing into this moment?
It's so easy to blame other people when things are uncomfortable. Love it. But do we blame them when things feel nice? Like, maybe not as much. Do we blame other people for our joy and delight? Like stand-up comedy, that's an obvious one. They made me laugh, but did so-and-so make me sad? That's one of the helpful tools. Maybe we could talk a little bit about like methods of ownership. First and easiest perhaps being changing that language, right? You made me feel X, Y, or Z becomes the feeling that's coming up for me now is X, Y, or Z.
Yeah, the feeling that's coming up for me, what I just noticed is like that thing you just said stirred up some sadness in me.
Yeah.
And I know we're just playing around with words. There's no right way to say it. But if you take the last two things that Steph and I said, the essence of them is like there's something within me already. And whatever just happened brought up the awareness that it's here. Right? I'm not saying that so if you said something super mean to me right now and you meant it, like that would hurt my feelings and I would feel sad. So if we didn't look into anything else that's swirling in me, that would already feel sad for me. But it's possible, I know it's true, that I've had a lot of mean things said to me before. So it's possible that on top of that hurt that I feel hearing you say that to me, it's also stirring up old hurts within me, right? That I've experienced before.
Yeah.
And when I have that awareness, I can choose what I want to do with that.
Yeah. So I'm thinking of helpful cues like words, for example, the things that we just talked about that you're making me feel. Also words like always and never. If you notice yourself saying that sort of thing, you might be in an old pattern, which might be in addition to a difficult thing you're dealing with right now. Any of the like, oh, this again energy is a helpful thing to notice. And then because I find the exploration of extremes really helpful in reviewing my patterns, I think the joy trigger one is a really good one. Like if everybody listening just goes around blaming other people for good feelings this week and saying that like, oh, you're triggering my delight or you've triggered my hunger, like things that don't carry an emotional charge for you, that will just create a bit of a buffer between you and the things that are actually causing you distress.
Right? Noticing what's helping you, and I'm saying helping, what's helping you connect to something that is present for you, right? But we would normally call that a trigger,
Yeah.
right? The
Yeah.
scowl on your face is helping me connect to this yucky feeling in my body. When my dad used to look at me like that, or when my mom used to give me that look, and it
Yeah.
feels really yucky right now. Like imagine if we had enough awareness to be able to name it like that instead of, why are you being an ass?
Yeah. It's powerful stuff. It's empowering stuff.
A lot of us are such thinky people and either quick to blurt things out loud people or like more of the passive aggressive nature of under our breath. And so I find things that your mind goes to, places your mind goes to, or words that you're like trying to bite your tongue and not say, or words that actually come out loud are very good indicators, like you said, cues that there's like something more going on. There's a bigger charge here than this moment or this interaction maybe calls for. And I knew someone where we would start laughing. One of her go-to giveaway thoughts and statements that there's a bigger charge, a bigger thing being stirred up than what's happening in the moment is they would either say out loud to their partner or like be muttering it under their breath, what the F is wrong with you? Like, what is
Mhm.
wrong with you? And like, I'm sure we've all thought that before about people who are strangers, about people we love and we care about. It's such a good indication because it's so loaded. It's loaded
Mhm.
with all this is all your fault. You are fully to blame. You are the problem, right?
Mhm.
Which I don't think there's that many things that we go through in life where it absolutely 100% is only one person's part of the dance. So when we're emphatically making claim and questioning what the F is wrong with you,
Mhm.
it's probably a good sign that it's touched on something, touched
Definitely.
on some charge, touched on something that lives and resides within you, whether you're fully aware of it or not.
That's right.
And that might be helpful to explore and discover what that might be. Because
Yeah.
I also want to name, it's exhausting and tiring. I've never met a person who walks around really thinking and believing like, what the heck is wrong with people? And
Yeah.
that's where you predominantly live in your mind, who actually feels happy and at peace and content in life, right? So it's
No,
not actually a fun place to live.
it's not. And, it really reveals how the actual trigger in all these circumstances is our thoughts and beliefs about the trigger. If you meditate, if you spend any amount of time in silent meditation, you will discover that your mind is bringing up things all the time. Things to do with you, things not to do with you, thoughts that seem to emerge from somewhere outside of your being. And all of the feelings as well will emerge with nobody else around. Like I've done a silent, wireless solo retreat, not a being about, and all of the feelings will come up, you know?
Mhm.
The trigger is being alive. And the empowering solution is to notice that there might be things outside of you that are frustrating or irritating or difficult. And the power you have is in noticing your mind and your thoughts and your feeling and taking responsibility for them, embracing them as your own and as a tool that can actually make life feel better and give you direction and purpose.
Mhm. Right? Our minds go very fast. And I've often played with this exercise of post-it notes. Just take a few post-it notes, write down some thoughts that you think pretty often, And I'm going to assume they're not always the most empowering thoughts, because generally speaking, that's more of what we do. And I'll have people read that and feel what it feels like to read that thought out loud and say it out loud a few times. And then we'll play this game where we tuck it in our back pocket and we walk around the room carrying that thought and belief in our back pocket. And I just we play a game. We're like, just pretend like this thought is just with you all day long, everywhere you go. How would you walk around the room? And how would you feel if this thought was just everywhere with you every second of the day?
Ugh.
Right? And they'll
Running
do
away
it.
from my own pants.
And they'll notice. And then we'll sit down and we'll take that thought and we will write a more neutral or better feeling thought. Not a fake thought, not an untrue thing, but something that's just more neutral, still accurate, or better feeling. They'll read that, feel that a few times, stick that one in the back pocket instead. And I'll say, imagine what it's like to walk around the room with that belief or that thought with you all day long. How would you be walking around the room? What would you be noticing? How would you be moving? What's happening with your breath and your posture and the cadence of your walk? Right? What happens with the sturdiness in the spine or the openness in the body and the torso? And people notice a big change just in which piece of paper is in their pocket.
Yeah.
Right?
That's
So
right.
imagine if you're actively ruminating or thinking this certain flavor of thought all day long, all the time, like what charge you're carrying with you everywhere you go, in every conversation you have, even if you can put on the pretty smiley face and it seems outwardly like you're fine, ready to have this conversation, happy to do it, still carrying that charge within.
Yeah.
Right? So, yeah.
The awareness is so key. I have to say, I've now finished reading a series of books about dragons that are wonderful by an author called Robin Hobb. And she's a genius and she says a lot of deep things. And one of them recently was that the most effective way to counteract a curse, this is in like olden wizarding times, is just knowing that it's been put on you.
Mm,
If
yeah.
curses exist, like
So it's not
that's
you, like it's an external thing.
yeah, someone has, a wizard has cursed you, but your awareness of the curse, your awareness of the Post-it note in your back pocket, your awareness of the charge about the crack in the wall
Yeah.
is like the almost cure.
Right.
That's
And
90%.
notice how many of us are not aware that there's Post-it notes in our pockets, and how many of us are maybe aware that there's Post-it notes in our pockets, but we're not aware of which Post-it notes. Or maybe no, I know the 3 main Post-it notes that I carry around, right? Intellectually, you might know. But do you know the charge that each one brings and stirs up in your body? Are you aware that you're walking around every day holding that charge? Right? Or some of us hold a Post-it note that says, if you can't fix the problem, don't think about the issue. Don't feel it. Right? Why
I
talk
like
about
that.
it if you can't do anything about it? Let's just carry on with life. And so that might not bring a particular charge when we use the word charge, but I think it brings a certain restriction and constriction of energy and holding something at bay that takes energy.
Yeah, huge.
Right? Yeah. And then another funny visual is like the megaphone we've talked about. Imagine you give this little animated being a little megaphone, a bullhorn thingy that just gets to mutter and shout those thoughts to you all day long, and they just follow you around. He's like, I'd want to drop kick that thing.
Yeah,
Right?
mutter and shout.
Yeah. Because that's what
Yeah,
they do. It's not just that they shout, they also mutter.
they mutter. Yeah, this creature you're describing, I could well do without. And we carry them around inside our heads and bodies just all the time.
Right. And I'm like, if you don't want to drop kick that one out, we're talking about embracing different parts of us. So we don't have to, do that. But what about giving the other animated being a megaphone? Could they mutter and shout some more helpful, positive, joyful things about you and your life? What if they both got a turn?
Right? I mean, I remember a time where I just couldn't even conceive of that happy megaphone creature that exists in me now. And I think of all the joy and love and simplicity and ease and connection that's possible that I just didn't know was possible. You can't conceive of it until you've met it, and then you meet it and you don't know how to trust it, and that takes a lot of work, and there's so many layers.
I think that, we've been asked this many times in group work before of what do you do when you're down in the dumps and you feel really hopeless and nothing seems to be helping or working, and you might not even have energy to make any change in your life. And I think we've talked about like just your willingness to name that's where you're at right now. And your openness to being aware that this is not a place you want to stay, living in that dark place, and an openness to the possibility that something you might one day believe that something could shift. Not the possibility that something could shift, but the possibility you might believe one day that something could shift. And when we've talked to people who've been in that state, they're like, okay, yeah, I could do that. And they're aware of like, I don't actually want my life to end right in this moment. I'm just wanting to name and acknowledge that life is feeling very hard right now, and I'd like it to be different. And even in them saying that, we see such a shift in their energy, right? What is it like to be aware that you have a desire for something different and better for yourself? Even let's like pause and how am I going to make that happen? Because a lot of us go there right away. Like, well, what if we rewind a little bit and just hang out in the fact that you're aware that there's a desire for something better or different for yourself? And feel into what that is like. And people always leave those moments feeling a little bit more hopeful, a little bit more connected to possibility, a little bit clearer that they don't actually want it to all end today.
Even an instant out of the swirl of our minds is a release. Yeah. Let's do a closing practice.
Yeah. So earlier we were holding what's inside. And now I'm like moving, sort of rocking side to side and sort of letting it slosh around. Like there's just stuff in all of us, right? It's a big soup in there.
A stew, a chunky stew.
I really liked chunky stew when I was a kid.
So you'd be carrying some associations with chunky stew.
I do. When I think about chunky soup, I think about the New England clam chowder. That was my favorite. And I think this is because must be, I think, an Asian thing or something. Like I didn't want to just drink the soup or eat the soup out of a bowl. Like it should be poured on rice.
Ooh, yum.
Yes. And that is an association. Chunky soup triggers up. It's interesting. It can trigger up nice nostalgic memories and can also trigger up, it can stir up memories of not having very much money. And that's what we're eating, right? But it also stirs up this delight of I've left home and I can eat whatever I want, and I want to eat chunky soup. So isn't it neat how one soup could actually stir up so many different things, right? That crack, if we go back to that crack in the wall, like I wonder if it could also be connected to, and you're not fully in that experience anymore, right? You made it through that time, right? The crack is there, but you are not fully the same person anymore, right? The crack is there and you know yourself better now.
Quickly the scream can become tears, hey? Yeah.
Right?
Gentle words.
So the crack can represent and symbolize so many things, but we often have an old map that only allows the crack to symbolize the crap.
Yeah.
And not also be a symbol for what have you gotten through and where are you now today. Yeah.
Thanks, Gigi. Thank goodness for Gigi. All right. Anything else you want to say?
Nope, that's all.
That's it. That's all. Okay. Well, thank you guys for being here. As always, please do like, follow, and subscribe. And if anything we've said here today has been helpful for you, as it was for me, please share with the ones that you care about. And we'll see you next time.
Bye.